Hey guys, the Explorer 4 here, the Horror Boy. Welcome back to some more reviews. And today we will be wrapping up the reviews on the Fly series. Now, going into this franchise, I was pretty excited to talk about these movies, but I was thinking it's probably not going to be that scary. You know, I'm not really familiar with the Fly movies, so I wasn't really sure how it was going to go. But honestly, this series really proved me wrong. I mean, this series surprised me. There's a lot of fun entries in this franchise, and yeah, there's not a bad movie of the bunch. I enjoyed all movies, so that was really cool. So yeah, if you can somehow track down this Fly box set, I very much recommend it, because to me, there's not one bad movie in this box set. They all look great. Still haven't checked out all the hours of features, so I'm probably going to dedicate a day to just doing that one time, just sitting down and watching all the special features and stuff like that. But yeah, the box set is amazing. And today we're going to be getting to the final review on the Fly series. Now, I want to say thank you guys so much for checking out these videos and these reviews. I do it for you guys. Y'all are the reason why I keep this channel going, and keep it going like it is. I know I don't have the fanciest videos, but you know, it's just fun to get on here and discuss these franchises and films with you guys, because you know, even if they're not really well known, I try to get these movies out there so that you guys can hopefully check them out one day, or just kind of get these reviews out there on films that I think are underrated. And today's review is going to be kind of like that, because today's review is going to be on a very underrated film. Now, of course, the last review I did was on this masterpiece. Now, this is one of my favorite films of all time, even outside of the horror genre. This is just one of my favorite movies out there. Perfect film to me. Perfect. The formula, the acting, the direction, the camera work, the score, the effects, the story. I think this is one of the most perfect films out there. It's a good drama. It's also got bits of comedy in there. It's also got bits of horror in there. It's got bits of tragedy in there. And I think is just an example of one of the best films of all time. And without a doubt is probably up there. Like, I would say Scanners and this are my top two favorite Cronenberg movies. I love them so much. As well as being just one of the best remakes of all time. I mean, this is how you do a remake, you know. So all these really crappy, awful, just lazily done remakes that are being done nowadays can take some notes about the Fly remake. Like, this is how you remake a film. Now, of course, to make a sequel to this, that's a big jump, because this is widely regarded as one of the best horror films of all time. And no matter how good you made the sequel, I just feel like it was one of those things where it was lightning in a bottle. You were not going to top the original The Fly. It just was not going to happen. Just like I was curious to see a Thing sequel, like Return of the Thing or whatever they were going to call it. But if I'm being honest, I'm not sure if you could top the original John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm not sure, because that's one of my favorite horror films of all time as well. And just one of those perfect movies to me. And I just wasn't sure, you know, how to top that movie. But nevertheless, they did make a sequel to this, and it came out in 1989. And that, of course, is The Fly 2, Like Father, Like Son. Which, really cool, has a lot of features. Has interviews, commentary, has alternate ending, which I didn't see yet, deleted scenes, a Fly 2 making of, vintage featurettes. I know they also have a lot of vintage interviews. But that's really cool how they gave this movie a lot of features, because I think it deserves a lot of features. I think this is the best sequel that we could have gotten. And I mean, yes, is it as good as the original Cronenberg remake? I wouldn't say it's as good, but at the same time, you were never going to top the original The Fly, which is why it's just, on one hand, I'm glad they made a sequel, because I do think it is a good continuation of the story. Like, it is a sequel. It does follow the first movie. It's one of those things where you can watch the first Fly, watch this one, and it'd be a good double feature. It's like Halloween 1 and 2. Good double feature. Just sit down one night and pop them both in back to back, and you can get a good story. And you can actually get a great story because, like, the way this movie ends actually has a really good ending. So, it does make for a really good double feature. And, as far as spoilers go, I might avoid them because this movie really isn't well known. This is a sequel that, I'll be honest, I had no clue there was a sequel to The Fly. Just like I didn't know there was a sequel to The Hidden. Like, what? There's a Hidden Part 2. There's a Chud Part 2. There's a Waxwork Part 2. Like, a lot of these movies, I didn't know there were sequels. Like, Basket Case. I didn't know there was a second Basket Case and a third one. But yeah, I had never heard about The Fly 2. Didn't hear much about the story. And, again, this is, like, the best sequel we could have gotten because it does try to do... It tries to do a lot of different things with the story and tries to be its own thing. Granted, does it have problems? Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. We'll get into the problems, the pros and cons here in a second. But overall, The Fly 2 is a really solid sequel. And it was written by Chris Wallace, who I believe was in charge of the effects on films like Gremlins, and I think he was in charge of the effects in the first movie, The Fly. So they kind of got him, be like, hey, you want to direct this movie? And he hasn't really directed a lot. I mean, I know he directed a Tales from the Crypt episode. But yeah, he did the special effects for Gremlins, The Fly. So he's a lot more known for his special effects. Apparently he was involved with Airplane, the comedy. So maybe like special effects for that. He worked on Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Creature Consultant, Creature Design and Effects. Then House 2, the second story. House 2 has some great effects. Arachnophobia, Hot Shots and Naked Lunch, Journey to the Forbidden Valley. A lot of these movies I'm really familiar with. So, but it was cool seeing him direct this movie. And I honestly thought he did a great job making this movie because he gave it his own look and feel. And, you know, I really enjoyed The Fly too. The story, you have Gina Davis's character at the beginning of the movie. It's not Gina Davis, but it's a different actress, but it's the same character. She gives birth to her son, who's kind of in this cocoon thing, and she dies during birth. And you think when the baby's born, it's just a fly creature, but it ends up being a human baby and has accelerated growth. And he gets raised in this lab, grows up really fast. Like when he's 5 years old, it looks like he's 20 or 30 years old. And, you know, as a kid, you see him, he's very smart. He builds his own inventions. He has, you know, higher brain power, like he can think really fast and he hacks, does formulas and stuff like that. And you even have a scene where there's a thing of flies, and when he puts his hand to the glass, there's a handprint made out of the flies. That was a cool idea. And he kind of slowly figures out that this company that has been raising him is kind of evil. And he meets Daphne Zuvega, who was also in Spaceballs. So it was really cool seeing her in this. Very different role for her. But she did a good job in this role. And basically, this corporation has the telepods, but they can't get them to work. So they're going to try and use Seth Brundle's son to figure out how to get them to work. Eventually, he does get them to work. but he finds out that this company is very corrupt. I think it's Bartok Industries. And he finds out that this guy who he thought was this father figure was a liar because they took this kid's, this kid's dog, which was like one of his only friends, and sent the dog to the teleportation pod. Not going to give away what happens, but let's just say the experiment doesn't go very well. And you really hate this group of villains. They're nasty villains. They're really good bad guys for the film. And it's basically Eric Stoltz, who I think is a great actor in this movie, is a great lead. He is trying to fight back against this corporation, tries to keep Daphne Zuvega out of harm's way. Meanwhile, there's background storylines going on, other things going on. Don't want to get into the spoilers yet because there are some spoilers, but yeah. Overall, The Fly 2, even though it's not as good as the first one, I think it's a really awesome sequel. I think it's one of the best sequels we could have gotten to The Fly. And if I'm being honest, to make a sequel to The Fly, it's a big risk because it's just a situation where I think unless you literally found the most perfect script, and this is only 2 years later, maybe 3 years if you consider them filming in 86. Or was the movie released in 86? So filming would have been in 85. So 3 or 4 years later they made this movie. It was not rushed per se, but it was a pretty fast, time frame to make a sequel. And I just think that it was a really tough spot to be in. However, I do think this is the best sequel you could have gotten because it gets a 5.1 on IMDb. That's lower than most of the other Fly movies, and I think that's kind of crazy because Curse of the Fly gets a higher rating than this. And I'll say this, I enjoyed The Fly 2 probably more than Curse of the Fly, Return of the Fly. So I do think it's a really underrated movie. Even though I do enjoy those films, I think this movie is a little bit better than those ones. But those are not bad movies. I think it's underrated and it's not talked about because it's compared to the first movie. And that's the tough thing about The Fly 2. You call it The Fly 2, you market it as Like Father, Like Son. It's a direct follow-up to the first movie. And on one hand, it's a good thing, but on the other hand, it's a bad thing because when you're making a sequel of this caliber, it's hard to follow up the first movie. But I think it still followed it up pretty damn good. I think this is a really good example of how you make a sequel to a really big movie. And I think it does a lot of great things. First of all, I think it has fantastic special effects. I love how they changed the design and look of the fly creature. Is it as classic as the original design from the Cronenberg film? I'd say I like that Brundlefly a little bit more, but I still like the way this one looked in this film. It's different, it's unique, and I liked how practical it was. And a lot of the gore in this movie, it is a very gory film. It's rated R, it's very gory and bloody. The gore and special effects in this movie are really top-notch. Amazing special effects in this film, all practical. And I can really appreciate that. Number 2, they have great villains in this movie. Bartok Industries and the security guard, who I believe was the sheriff in Freddy vs. Jason. He's actually in that movie too. And he plays the villain in both movies. The guy that played Bartok, I thought he was a good villain. The asshole scientists. Number 3, you have great leads. You have Eric Stoltz, who I thought his performance was really good because he starts out, he's very naive. He acts very childish, and I thought he nailed that because this is somebody that's been sheltered their entire life, so they would be a little naive and trusting everybody they see. So I thought Eric Stoltz did a great job acting-wise because from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, the character goes through various different phases and goes from point A to point B as a different character by the end of the movie. Character development is done. So that was nailed. Eric Stoltz is a great lead. Daphne Zuvega is a great lead. And I didn't realize this, but they actually did bring back John Getz for a little role. And of course, he doesn't really want to talk to the son of Seth Brundle because of the hand and the leg that got melted in the first movie. So he kind of tells him about this process that maybe could work, where you could reverse, basically, not the exact same as Return of the Fly, but, you know, if you get somebody else in the pod with you, you can kind of trade the gene to them and you become normal. That was pretty cool seeing John Getz back. I forgot I think it was on number 4. Number 4, great music. I think the music in this movie is wonderful. It's a different kind of score. It's got a nice sound to it and a really good score. Really good sounding music. Number 5, good direction. Good shots, cool lighting. I like the way this movie looks. I like how the energy of the movie is and how it flows. For being an hour and like 45 minutes, it's a pretty fast-paced movie, not boring at all. You feel bad for these characters, and it still is a very tragic story. And I think overall it's a good story. I think it's a great movie. If I do have any problems, though, we're going to kind of get into the spoilers a little bit here, so spoiler alert. I know it's just, if I got to get into the spoilers, I'm going to get into the problems. But yeah, spoiler alert starting now. So if you haven't seen The Fly 2, you know, go watch it and come back and then watch the rest of the review. But they do not really copy, but they do repeat a lot of the same things from the first movie in this movie, and it felt like they did it just to be more similar to the first movie. Now, I do think that the love interest and the relationship could have been done in this movie between Eric Stoltz and Daphne Zuvega, both good actors. But I feel like it was a little bit rushed in this movie. Like, the way they wrote it, the way everything plays out, it was a very fast-paced, like, they fall in love like that. And it's kind of like how in this movie, when I noticed it in this film, the relationship forms very fast because in, like, 2 scenes, they get married. But at least in this movie, it kind of made sense to the story and why it was done. It kind of made a little bit of sense here. In this movie, it literally feels really rushed. Like, they felt like they had to have a love interest in the relationship here. I just thought that could have been more fleshed out, but it's not really a big problem. Not really any big problems. I do like the design of the new fly creature, but it seems a little centipede. Like, there's no wings. Even the way the face looks, even the way the design of the body looks, it looks more like a centipede than a fly. But granted, I still like the way it looks, so it does look pretty cool. So in a way, it's not really a problem, just something more of a notice. So we got that. If I have any other problems, just a lot of the same parts, like a lot of repeats of the story. Like, you have, once again, Eric Stoltz's character withering away to a fly creature. That, I thought, was really similar to the first movie. And there's only, like, a handful of differences. Like, this time, when he's transforming, he's more accepting of it. And he's more knowing that this is a good power. This can make him more powerful. But I felt it would have been cool if, like, imagine if he could transform into a fly and then go back to a human. So, like, he can transform at will. I know it sounds silly, it sounds stupid, but if it was done very well, I could buy it because, like, well, technically this is a hybrid of this fly creature. So what if he got, you know, kind of like a Incredible Hulk situation where if he gets angry, he kind of turns into this fly creature and goes back to a human when he calms down. Or it'd been really cool if, like, the Bartok industry was messing with them. and then he finally just snaps and becomes the fly creature and gets revenge. That would have been really cool. But it is the same thing where it's him, day by day, turning more into the fly. The effects look good, though. I will say that. The effects look great. But yeah, that's probably my last problem, is that they do a lot of the same repeats from the first Fly movie. Besides that, the movie's great. It's fantastic. The effects look wonderful. The story is awesome. It's still different enough to where it's a very unique film. It's not a carbon copy of the first Fly. I guess I could also throw in, it's not really a huge problem, but it is something that I noticed. Eric Stoltz, these scientists are treating him really bad, but yet he still listens to them. He still kind of follows their orders and stuff like that. But then again, it's not really a problem. It's a nitpick. So that doesn't even really count, just a nitpick. But yeah, overall, great sequel, man. Music, poster, which is very similar to the first one, but I still think this one's pretty cool poster. It's a good sequel, good follow-up, great double feature between this and the first one. Direction's on point, acting's on point, the cast is great. Overall, The Fly 2, I'm going to give it probably a 7.5 out of 10. Wonderful sequel, underrated as hell. Definitely give it a watch if you can. And if you have seen it, definitely let me know your guys' thoughts on this film in the comments below. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for the Fly series. It's been an awesome time doing these reviews. And, yeah, thank you guys so much for stopping by and supporting the videos. I really appreciate it. But anyway, it's going to do it for now on the Fly movies. I'll see you guys later. Explorer 4 is out. And remember, the magic word: cheeseburger. Have a good night.